So let's add back in our items. And again, I'm going to cheat a little bit by copying my home. Again, it's also going to have to be a stateful component because, again, it's going to need to subscribe to what's happening on the store. It's not depending on things getting passed down, so it can't be it can't end up being just a presentational component. I'm going to go over here. We'll modify things a little bit. So we are going to have to do something with destroy item. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say this dot destroy item equals this dot destroy item dot bind this. And we'll go over here and we'll say destroy item. This will end up getting passed in an item. And here, what we're going to end up doing is that we're going to want to notify our store of this change in state. So let's go over here. Again, we're not going to have to pass anything down. That's the advantage here, where items is going to be items. And when we go to destroy an item, it's not a question of us setting our own state because we have to let the rest of the application know about it as well. The nav bar has to know about it as well. So what we're going to end up doing here is we'll say items equals, and we'll say this dot state dot items, and we're going to filter them. So the item that we're filtering over it, we want you, as long as your ID is not equal to the ID that we ended up passing here. And at this point, we're going to tell our store we want to publish the new items. So now this component is responsible for doing the destroying. And let's just make sure we actually bring in destroy item from this. Let's see what happens here. So we've got duplicate declaration of home because this is not home. This is going to be items. And here, we should be able to go and add new item. And we should be able to go to items. But we're going to actually see some messages here. When we go to delete items, and I think I was moving ahead of myself. It's not store.push items, it's store.publish items. So we're going to go back to two items. We could add some items. And we're going to see some warning messages that are here. We'll talk about that in a second. But if I go to items here, I should be able to delete them. And I'll see some functionality, but I'm also going to see some messages that you're trying to update state on components that aren't mounted. And that's not a good practice to do. So one thing that we want to also do is that for both our items, component will unmount is also a method. And what we'll do is when we subscribe, we'll take the result of subscribe and put it into unsubscribe. And when we unmount, we'll call this dot unsubscribe. And we'll do the same thing here, and we'll end up doing it on our home page as well. So here's our home. We'll do component will unmount. Again, we've got to make sure if we're going to do this, we catch this unsubscribe method. And hopefully, right, if we end up doing this, we can end up going to our home page. We can end up adding items. We could go over here. We could end up removing items. And so if you are going to subscribe to something and that thing you're subscribing to is going to end up changing your state, which is not uncommon, you're also going to want to unsubscribe to it. And you might ask, well, if you did that, how come you didn't have to unsubscribe to the nav bar? And it doesn't hurt to actually do this in the nav bar as well. We're getting a little bit lucky because the nav bar is there for every route and it never does end up unmounting. So I'm going to put this here. It's not going to end up breaking anything, but it probably is better practice if you are subscribing that you also make the point of unsubscribing. And so, again, the big takeaway here is not necessarily that you don't have uh, less code, but the takeaway here is that you just don't have to think in terms of passing things down. And again, if you're passing things down one level, it's not the end of the world. But if you're passing things down 3 or 4 levels, it can get really difficult to maintain this. And what we're doing is we're saying, hey, look, application, you don't have to worry about maintaining it. We're going to have our store end up maintaining the state. And if we're interested in getting the data from the store, we can end up getting it. And if we're interested in it changing, we can end up subscribing to it. And if we're interested in modifying it, we can end up publishing changes to the store, which we're doing here. We're doing it inline, and here we're doing it with a method that we ended up binding. And really the next thing is going in and seeing how you could end up, instead of having to use this sort of homemade event emitter, which to some degree is what Redux is, we could actually modify this and we could end up using Redux instead of this store.